the object that shouldn't exist. We think we know the grand story of human progress. It is a timeline we learn as children, a steady, linear march from the bronze spear to the marble temple, from the water wheel to the steam engine, from the abacus to the microchip. It is a reassuring story, one where each age builds logically upon the last, and where the technological capabilities of our ancestors are neatly catalogued and understood. But what if a single object were discovered that took that clean, orderly timeline and shattered it into 1,000 pieces? What if we found something so complex, so sophisticated, so far beyond its time that it felt less like archaeology and more like finding the wreckage of a time machine? Imagine you are in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. You walk through its grand halls, past the magnificent bronze statues of gods, their serene faces staring into eternity. You pass the powerful marble figures of athletes and heroes, their bodies a perfect testament to the Greek ideal. These are objects you understand. They speak of art, mythology, and a civilization's vision of itself. Then, in a quiet, climate-controlled case, you see it. It is not magnificent. It is a collection of corroded, fragmented, greenish bronze lumps, looking like something salvaged from the bottom of the sea. It looks like little more than calcified rock, but within this humble, ruined object lies a secret so profound that it has forced us to completely reevaluate the genius of the ancient world. This object is a machine of such staggering complexity, with a system of dozens of intricate, interlocking gears, that nothing comparable would be invented again on Earth for at least another 1,400 years. It is a clockwork cosmos, a portable, mechanical computer from the 1st century BC that could predict the movements of the sun, the moon, and the planets, and even the timing of eclipses, with breathtaking accuracy. It is an artifact that simply should not exist. Tonight, we begin our deep dive into this single object. We will explore the story of its dramatic discovery in an ancient shipwreck, the century-long, painstaking investigation to unlock its secrets, the almost supernatural genius of its internal mechanics, and the profound, unanswered questions it poses about a lost tradition of scientific knowledge. This is not just the story of a strange artifact. This is the story of a crack in the timeline of history. This is the story of the Antikythera Mechanism, the discovery, a wreck at the bottom of the sea. The story of the mechanism does not begin in the quiet, dust-filled halls of a university, but in chaos and violence, the fury of a Mediterranean storm in the spring of 1900. A team of Greek sponge divers from the island of Symi, captained by a man named Dimitrios Kontos, was working its way across the Aegean. They were tough, ordinary men, engaged in a dangerous and ancient profession. When a violent storm descended upon them, they were forced to take shelter near the small, rocky, and largely uninhabited island of Antikythera, a desolate place known mostly as a hazard to sailors, lying between Crete and the Peloponnese. When the storm finally broke, the captain, ever the pragmatist, decided to send one of his best divers down for a test dive in the uncharted waters where they had anchored. A man named Elias Stadiatis put on the heavy copper helmet. The clumsy canvas suit was bolted on, and he was lowered into the deep. But when he was pulled back to the surface a short time later, he was in a state of terror. He ripped off his helmet, his eyes wide with fear, and began babbling about a horrifying sight on the seabed, nearly 150 feet below, a field of rotting human corpses and decaying horses, scattered amongst the rocks. Captain Kontos, a seasoned captain, was skeptical. He knew the dangers of nitrogen narcosis, the rapture of the deep that can cause powerful hallucinations in divers at that depth. Believing his man was delirious, he put on the heavy diving suit himself and descended to verify the claim. But what he found was something far stranger and more wondrous than either of them could have imagined. The rotting corpses were not bodies, but a breathtaking collection of magnificent bronze and marble statues, the cargo of an ancient shipwreck, their ghostly pale hands reaching out from the silt of the seabed, The divers had stumbled upon one of the richest Roman-era shipwrecks ever found. They reported their discovery to the Greek authorities, and the Hellenic Royal Navy was dispatched to oversee the first major underwater archaeological excavation in history. For nearly a year, the semi-divers, using their own primitive and dangerous equipment, worked to bring the treasure to the surface. It was a brutal and costly effort. One diver died from the bends, and 2 were left permanently paralyzed. But they recovered a hoard of priceless artifacts, beautiful glassware, intricate pottery, and the magnificent bronze statue now known as the Antikythera youth. And amongst all this celebrated treasure, they also brought up a series of corroded, formless lumps of bronze, which were cast aside and sent to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, assumed to be little more than debris. For 2 years, the greatest secret of the ancient world lay dormant and unrecognized on a museum shelf. The first clue: a gear in the stone. For 2 years, the greatest secret of the ancient world lay in plain sight, hiding under a cloak of rock and corrosion, while the magnificent bronze statues from the shipwreck drew crowds and acclaim at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. This strange, unassuming lump was cast aside. It was a forgotten piece of wreckage from the sea floor, unworthy of serious study, catalogued with the other miscellaneous and unidentifiable fragments. It sat on a shelf, slowly drying out after 2 millennia of immersion in the salt water of the Aegean, its true nature completely hidden within its rocky shell. Then, on May 17, 1902, an archaeologist named Valerios Stais was studying the artifacts from the shipwreck. As he examined the corroded bronze lump, he noticed something that had been missed by everyone else. A piece of the object's rock-like outer casing had split and fallen away, likely due to the slow process of drying. This crack opened a tiny window into the heart of the object. He leaned in closer, expecting to see nothing more than the same formless, crystalline corrosion. But inside the fissure, something glinted. It was not the chaotic texture of rock, but the perfect, repeating, man-made geometry of teeth on a gear wheel. This was the pivotal moment, the first true discovery. Stais, with a dawning sense of disbelief, began to examine the object with meticulous care. He identified not one, but a whole system of gears, layered one on top of another in a complex arrangement. He saw faint, tiny Greek letters, parts of inscriptions that once covered the machine's surface, and he could make out the traces of a circular, graduated dial, like the face of a complex scientific instrument. In that moment, the object ceased to be a lump of rock. It transformed into a question, a paradox that would haunt science and history for the next century. Stais knew instantly what he was looking at. This was not a piece of a ship's anchor, nor a simple tool. This was a machine of incredible complexity, an astronomical instrument, perhaps a kind of clockwork model of the heavens. He published his findings, becoming the first person to correctly identify the object as a device of immense scientific importance. He had found the first undeniable clue, the single gear in the stone that proved that our modern understanding of ancient Greek technology was profoundly, fundamentally wrong. The early investigation, a puzzle of bronze. The gear had been found. The first, impossible clue was there. But for half a century after Valerios Stais's discovery, the mystery of the Antikythera Mechanism only deepened. The object presented a terrible, frustrating paradox to science. It was a locked box whose secrets were too fragile to uncover. It had been shattered into 82 separate, corroding fragments. To physically take them apart would be to destroy them forever, turning the delicate, ancient gears into piles of bronze dust. To leave them alone would be to let their secrets die, unspoken. The machine sat in the museum, a known enigma, but an unsolvable one, a silent testament to a knowledge that seemed utterly beyond the grasp of the 20th century to comprehend. Then, in the 1950s, a British historian of science at Yale University named Derek J. de Solla Price became obsessed with this puzzle of bronze. He was a man uniquely suited to the task, a patient and brilliant detective of ancient technology, he dedicated more than 20 years of his life to a painstaking, almost fanatical, investigation of the fragments. He understood that he could not open the box, so he had to find a way to see inside it. He brought the then new technology of gamma radiography and X-ray photography to bear on the fragments, using powerful radiation to try and peer through the dense layers of corrosion and sediment, like a doctor attempting to X-ray a fossilized ghost. The images were crude, shadowy, and difficult to interpret, but they gave him his first glimpses of the machine's hidden heart. He began the meticulous, almost maddeningly difficult, work of counting the teeth on the gears that were just barely visible in the radiographs. It was in this painstaking count that he found the key. He discovered one large gear with precisely 235 teeth. To an astronomer or a student of ancient calendars, this number was electric. It is the exact number of lunar months in the 19-year Metonic cycle, a fundamental calendar cycle used by the Greeks to reconcile solar years and lunar months. He found another gear with 127 teeth and another with 223, the number of months in the Saros cycle, the basis for predicting eclipses. This was no coincidence. This was a Rosetta Stone of gears. In 1974, after decades of work, Price published his seminal paper, Gears from the Greeks. In it, he boldly declared to a skeptical world exactly what he had found. He presented his schematic model of the complex gear trains, showing how they connected and worked together to model the movements of the sun and moon. The academic world was stunned, and many were openly dismissive. The idea of such intricate mechanical sophistication, of differential gearing and complex astronomical prediction, existing in the 12th century BC, flew in the face of all accepted history. But Price had laid the undeniable groundwork. While he could not see every hidden detail, he had correctly identified the object's soul. He had proven that this was not just a strange clock, but a complex, mechanical model of the entire cosmos, a true puzzle of bronze, whose full solution would have to wait for a technology even he could not have imagined. The modern revelation, peering inside with light. Derek Price had deciphered the soul of the machine, but its body remained a ghost, a shadowy image seen through the crude lens of early X-rays. For his theories to be proven, for the full, breathtaking genius of the device to be revealed, science would need a new kind of lighter way to perform a non-invasive autopsy on a 2,000-year-old technological ghost. For decades, the fragments sat, their deepest secrets still locked away within their corroded forms. The world had to wait for the technology to catch up to the mystery. That moment arrived in the early 2000s. An international collaboration of scientists, archaeologists, and historians formed the Antikythera Mechanism research project, bringing the full power of 21st century technology to bear on this ancient puzzle. First, they used a technique called polynomial texture mapping, or PTM. This system takes hundreds of photographs of an object, each with the light coming from a different angle. A powerful computer then combines these images, allowing researchers to manipulate the light on a virtual version of the object, revealing surface details like faint, worn inscriptions that are completely invisible to the naked eye. For the first time, the user manual that covered the machine's casing could be read, its letters emerging from the corrosion like ghosts on a screen. But the true revelation came when the team built a massive, custom-designed, 8-ton X-ray computed tomography, or CT, scanner around the fragile fragments. This machine, far more powerful than any medical scanner, was capable of bombarding the object with high-energy X-rays, taking thousands of cross-sectional images, or slices. A supercomputer then assembled these slices into a complete, high-resolution 3D model of the interior, allowing the researchers to virtually dissect the machine, gear by gear, without ever touching it. Slowly, on their computer screens, a digital ghost began to take shape, layer by layer. The scanner peeled back the centuries of corrosion, revealing every single one of the 30 bronze gears, perfectly rendered in virtual space. They could see how the complex gear trains connected, confirming Price's theories about the Saros and metonic cycles. But they also discovered features Price could never have seen. They found a hidden 4-year dial that tracked the cycle of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympics, a feature that connected the cosmic cycles of the heavens with the human cycles of culture and sport. The modern revelation was complete. Price's theories were not only vindicated, they were shown to be an understatement. The researchers could now build a complete, working digital model of the entire machine. They could turn the virtual crank and watch as the gears whirred into life, the pointers for the sun, moon, and planets moving through the zodiac, the eclipse warnings appearing on their spiral dials. The ghost had been fully rendered. The team had peered inside with light and found a level of mechanical genius that truly had no equal in the ancient world. The front dial, a map of the known cosmos. Now that scientists could peer inside the machine, they could finally reconstruct what its user would have seen 2,000 years ago. The front face of the device was its grand display, its main screen. It was not a screen of pixels and light, but of bronze and gold. A beautiful, handcrafted map of the entire known cosmos as the ancient Greeks understood it. It was here that the complex calculations performed by the hidden gears were translated into a dynamic, visual prediction of the heavens. The display was dominated by 2 large concentric rings. The outer ring was fixed, meticulously inscribed with the 360 degrees of the zodiac and the names of its 12 constellations: Krios the ram, Tavros the bull, and so on. This was the celestial stage, the unmoving backdrop of the stars against which all heavenly motion was measured. Inside this was a second, movable ring, marked with the 365 days of the Egyptian solar calendar. The Egyptians used a simple and stable calendar of 12 30-day months and 5 extra days at the end of the year. The Greeks adopted this for their astronomical calculations because it did not have the complex leap years of their own civil calendars, making it a perfect, unchanging ruler for measuring time. This ring could be slightly adjusted by the user to account for the quarter day of a true solar year, keeping the device aligned with the seasons. Across this celestial map, a series of pointers would have moved, each driven by its own complex gear train, each representing a heavenly body. A sun pointer would have shown the position of the sun in the zodiac on any given day. A second, more complex moon pointer would race around the dial, its motion exquisitely modeled. This pointer likely carried a small, half-black, half-silver ball that rotated on its own axis, perfectly displaying the phase of the moon new, waxing, full, and waning in sync with its position in the sky. But perhaps the most ambitious feature, proven to exist by the internal gearing and the surviving inscriptions, was a set of pointers for the 5 planets known to the Greeks: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Replicating the strange, looping retrograde motions of these planets was one of the most difficult challenges in all of ancient astronomy. The mechanism, incredibly, had a system of epicyclic gears designed to do just that. To turn the crank of the Antikythera mechanism was, therefore, to hold the power of a god in your hands. It was to watch the great dance of the heavens play out in miniature before your very eyes. You could set it to the date of your birth and see the state of the heavens at that moment. You could wind it forward to a future date to see if a planet would be visible. It was a philosophical machine, a teaching tool, and a window into what the Greeks saw as the divine mathematical order of the universe, all contained within a small wooden box: the rear dials, the cycles of time, and eclipses. If the front of the mechanism was a snapshot of the present heavens, a map showing what is, then the back was a window into the deep, recurring rhythms of time itself. It was here that the machine moved beyond simple display and became a true calculator, an engine of prophecy. The 2 large dials on the back were designed to decode the great cycles of the sun and moon, allowing a user to predict celestial events far into the future, events that were central to both civic and religious life in the ancient world. The upper rear dial was a magnificent 5-turn spiral that tracked the metonic cycle, This was the solution to one of the great calendrical challenges of antiquity: how to reconcile the 365.25-day solar year with the roughly 29.5-day lunar month. For a society whose agriculture and religious festivals were often governed by the phases of the moon, this was a crucial problem. The Metonic cycle represents the discovery that 235 lunar months is almost exactly equal to 19 solar years. The dial on the mechanism was a beautiful visualization of this 19-year cycle, with a pointer that would trace the spiral path, indicating each of the 235 months in sequence, allowing the user to keep a complex lunar calendar perfectly synchronized with the solar year. The lower rear dial was even more astonishing. It was the eclipse predictor. To be able to predict an eclipse in the ancient world was to hold a power once reserved for the gods. To replace fear and superstition with mathematical certainty, this 4-turn spiral dial was a mechanical representation of the Saros cycle, an approximately 18-year period after which the Sun, Moon, and Earth returned to the same relative geometry, causing the pattern of eclipses to repeat. But the dial did more than just predict a cycle. At the specific months where an eclipse was possible, the ancient maker had inscribed tiny symbols, or glyphs. These glyphs told the user whether to expect a solar eclipse, I for I lambda e omicron upsilon Helios, or a lunar eclipse, Ses for Ses, epsilon, lambda e nu eta, Selene, and even included notations about the predicted time of day. As if this were not enough, this eclipse dial had its own smaller, subsidiary dial, the exoligmos dial, which tracked a 54-year cycle, 3 Saros cycles. Its purpose was to allow the user to make a crucial correction. Because each Saros cycle is about 8 hours longer than a whole number of days, the location of a returning eclipse shifts by about a third of the way around the globe. The exoligmos dial told the user to add 8 or 16 hours to the time of the eclipse to get a precise local prediction. Tucked alongside these cosmic dials was one final, small dial that tracked the 4-year cycle of the great Pan-Hellenic Games, with markings for the Olympics, and the games at Isthmia, Nemea, and Delphi. This single feature proves the mechanism was not just a tool for lonely astronomers. It was deeply connected to the social and cultural life of the entire Greek world. The back of the mechanism, then, was a machine for understanding patterns. It revealed a universe that was not chaotic, but a grand, intricate, and, most importantly, predictable clock. The hidden genius, the pin and slot mechanism. The ancient Greek astronomers were brilliant and meticulous observers of the night sky. They knew the heavens were not a simple, perfectly uniform clock. They had noticed a particularly vexing problem, a subtle irregularity that defied easy explanation. The moon did not move at a constant speed across the sky. It appeared to subtly speed up and slow down on its monthly journey through the zodiac. Explaining this first lunar anomaly was one of the great theoretical challenges of Greek astronomy, leading to complex geometric models of epicycles and deferents. But building a physical, mechanical machine to replicate it was a challenge of an entirely different order, one that required a stroke of pure mechanical genius, hidden deep within the heart of the mechanism. When modern researchers used CT scans to create a 3D model of the machine's internal gearing, they were able to digitally separate each gear and study its function. Deep within the complex arrangement that drove the moon pointer, they found it, a small, almost elegant solution to this ancient problem. The challenge was immense. How do you make a final output gear, the one that moves the moon pointer, speed up and slow down in a regular cycle, when it is being driven by a main gear that is turning at a constant, uniform speed? The creator's solution was a pin and slot mechanism. It worked like this. One gear in the train turned a second, slightly smaller gear that was mounted eccentrically, or off-center. This second gear had a small pin sticking out of it. This pin, in turn, fitted into a narrow slot on a third gear. As the first gear turned, the off-center gear with the pin would wobble in a small circle. This meant the pin would slide back and forth inside the slot of the third gear. For one part of the revolution, as the pin moved towards the center of the slotted wheel, it drove it faster, As it moved towards the outer edge of the wheel, it drove it slower. The result was a beautiful, rhythmic, and perfectly calculated variable motion. The output of this system was a pointer that sped up and slowed down in a smooth cycle, precisely mimicking the apparent acceleration and deceleration of the moon in the sky. This single, small mechanism is arguably the most brilliant feature of the entire device. It is a physical, mechanical embodiment of a complex, astronomical theory. It proves that the maker was not just a skilled craftsman who could cut gears, but a brilliant theoretical engineer, capable of translating abstract cosmic principles into a precise, functioning system of bronze. This one hidden feature, more than any other, is what elevates the Antikythera mechanism from a clever clock into a true analog computer, a device containing a level of conceptual brilliance that would not be seen again in the world for over 1400 years. The unsolved mystery. Who were the makers? Every great work of art, every revolutionary invention, bears the mark of its creator. We know who painted the Mona Lisa, who invented the printing press, who wrote the laws of motion. But the Antikythera mechanism is an anonymous ghost. It is a masterpiece of mechanical genius without a signature, a testament to a mind or a workshop that has vanished from history, leaving behind only this single, miraculous object. Who on earth could have possibly conceived of and built such a thing 2,000 years before its time? The trail of clues begins on the prosperous and cosmopolitan Greek island of Rhodes in the 12th century BC. At that time, Rhodes was a major center for commerce, but also for astronomy and mechanics. The inscriptions on the device are written in a specific dialect of Koine Greek, and the cultural calendar of athletic events gives special prominence to games that were important to Rhodes and nearby Corinth, strongly suggesting a connection to this part of the Greek world. The Roman shipwreck on which it was found was likely a cargo vessel, perhaps carrying plundered treasures from Greece back to a wealthy Roman patron. The mechanism was not a navigational tool for the ship. It was precious cargo. This has led to several key suspects. The Roman writer Cicero, in the 1st century BC, wrote of seeing two similar mechanical spheres, one built by the legendary inventor Archimedes, which showed the motions of the heavens. While Archimedes lived too early to have built this specific device, it proves that a tradition of such planetariums existed, and the mechanism could be a later product of his school of thought. The prime suspect for many researchers, however, is the astronomer Hipparchus. He is considered the greatest astronomer of the ancient world, and was working on Rhodes at the exact time the mechanism was likely built. Crucially, it was Hipparchus who developed the very astronomical theories about the moon's irregular orbit that the device's most brilliant gearing system is designed to replicate. The mechanism is almost a mechanical manifestation of his life's work, but to search for a single name, a lone genius, may be to miss the true, and even deeper, mystery. A machine this complex is never the first of its kind. It is the pinnacle of a long and sophisticated tradition of precision engineering. It would have required a workshop of master craftsmen, metallurgists who could create the bronze alloys, and artisans who could fashion the tiny, precise gear teeth by hand. It required a community of scholars to provide the astronomical data and a wealthy patron to fund such an expensive and time-consuming project. Of this entire school of Hellenistic engineering, we have nothing, not a single text describing their methods, not a single other gear, not one specialized tool has ever been found. It is as if an entire branch of human knowledge flourished, reached a breathtaking height, and then was utterly and completely lost to history, leaving this one shipwrecked survivor to tell us that the story of technology we thought we knew is wrong. Its legacy, a crack in the timeline of history. So what is the ultimate meaning of this small, corroded machine, rescued from the seabed? Its legacy is not found in the bronze of its gears, but in the profound and unsettling questions it forces us to ask about the very nature of history itself. The Antikythera mechanism is more than just an ancient artifact. It is a ghost from a future that never happened. It is a single, beautiful, and undeniable piece of evidence that our understanding of the past has been fundamentally incomplete. After the creation of this device in the 12th century BC, the technological tradition that built it vanished. The Roman world, for all its genius in civil engineering, in aqueducts and roads and concrete, never replicated it. The intricate knowledge of epicyclic gearing and precision mechanics seems to have faded away, becoming a lost art. As the Roman Empire fell and the so-called Dark Ages descended upon Europe, this level of mechanical sophistication disappeared from the world. It would not be until the great astronomical clocks of the 14th century European cathedrals that anything even approaching this complexity would be seen again. For 1400 years, humanity had to slowly and painstakingly reinvent a technology that the ancient Greeks had already mastered. This single object represents a technological leap so vast that its rediscovery is like finding a jet engine in the tomb of Tutankhamun. Before the mechanism, our image of Greek genius was often one of the abstract mind of Plato's philosophy, Euclid's geometry, and Eratosthenes' measurements of the earth. We saw them as brilliant theorists, but not necessarily as precision engineers. The mechanism proves this view was wrong. It is a perfect fusion of theoretical science and applied mechanics. It shows that they had the ability to translate their most advanced and complex astronomical theories into a working, physical, computational device. It bridges the gap between the mind of the philosopher and the hands of the craftsman. This leads to one of the most tantalizing what-ifs in all of history. What if this technological tradition hadn't been lost? What if the organizational power of the Roman Empire had embraced this Hellenistic mechanical genius, mass-producing similar devices, improving upon them, and spreading them across the known world? Could a different kind of industrial or scientific revolution have been sparked in antiquity? We will never know. The Antikythera Mechanism, then, is a humbling and profound reminder that history is not a straight, upward line of progress. It is a branching river, with some streams that flow into the great ocean of the present, and others that simply disappear into the desert sands of time. This single object is the sole survivor from a lost river of knowledge. It is a crack in our timeline, a beautiful, complex, and undeniable message from a forgotten world. And so, our journey ends where it began, in the quiet, climate-controlled halls of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, standing before the fragmented, ghostly remains of a 2,000-year-old machine. It no longer looks like a simple, corroded lump of bronze. After all, we have learned, we see it now for what it is: a silent oracle, a shattered mechanical brain, a masterpiece of a lost science. Its humble appearance belies a significance so profound that it has reshaped our entire understanding of the ancient world. It is, perhaps, the single most important artifact ever recovered from the dust of ages. We have followed its story from the very beginning, from the fury of a Mediterranean storm that forced a team of Greek sponge divers to seek shelter in an unknown bay. We have descended with them into the murky depths and witnessed their astonishment at discovering not a graveyard of men, but a treasure trove of art from a Roman shipwreck. We stood by in the museum for 2 long years as the object lay forgotten, until the patient eye of an archaeologist, Valerios Stais, noticed a crack in its stony facade and saw the first, impossible glint of a gear wheel, the clue that would launch a century of investigation. We have walked alongside the tireless investigators who dedicated their lives to this puzzle of bronze. We felt the obsessive determination of Derek J. de Sola Price, who, with the crude X-rays of his time, first deciphered the machine's soul, counting the teeth on its ghostly gears and boldly declaring to a skeptical world that he had found an ancient computer. We then witnessed the breathtaking power of modern technology, as an international team of scientists peered inside the fragments with high-energy light, creating a perfect digital ghost of the machine, revealing every hidden shear, every pin, every slot, and deciphering the thousands of characters of its instruction manual, confirming that Price's most daring theories were not only right, but were an understatement of the device's true genius. We have marveled at the machine itself, a portable, clockwork cosmos. We have seen how its elegant pointers trace the paths of the sun and moon against the zodiac, how its intricate spiral dials could predict the subtle, repeating cycles of eclipses over decades, and how its most brilliant, hidden mechanism, a simple pin in a slot, was designed to model the strange, anomalous dance of the moon in its orbit. It was a machine that not only mapped the heavens but also connected them to human culture, its gears also tracking the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. It was a fusion of science, spirit, and society, all housed within a small wooden box. But after all the analysis and all the digital reconstructions, we are left with the most profound mystery of all. Who were the makers? Who was the Hipparchus or the Archimedes in spirit who conceived of such a thing? And who were the master craftsmen who possessed the skill to build it? The existence of this single, impossibly complex object implies the existence of an entire tradition of knowledge, a school of precision, mechanical engineering that flourished in the Hellenistic world. Yet, of this entire tradition, only the Antikythera Mechanism survives. There are no other examples, no prototypes, no lesser machines, no texts describing their construction. It is as if the world's only surviving jet engine was found in a medieval castle. The tradition that created it has vanished so completely that its absence is as baffling as the object itself. This leads us to its ultimate, humbling legacy. The Antikythera Mechanism is a powerful rebuke to our modern, linear view of human progress. It proves that history is not a simple, upward march. It is a complex story of brilliant peaks and devastating losses, of knowledge that can be gained and then utterly forgotten. It is a crack in the timeline, a message in a bottle written not in words, but in the language of bronze and mathematics. Its message is simple and profound. You do not know us as well as you think you do. The past is stranger, more complex, and more brilliant than you can ever imagine. But for every real physical mystery like the Antikythera Mechanism that challenges our understanding of history, there is another, more ethereal legend of lost technology that haunts our collective imagination. It is the story of a great island continent, a utopian civilization of immense power and wisdom that was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Subscribe to join fellow history insomniacs for doses of boring brilliance. New sleep-friendly history videos are uploaded most days.